Yeah. So, switching topics here. For those, I think it was flagged on Friday's show. Hat tip to the community member who raised it for us. But Howard Lutnick sat down with the All In podcast. Several members, Scott Bessett earlier in the week. I forget which podcast, but the administration, Sean, appears to be following the campaign's strategy of sitting down with alternative media sources for these much longer form interviews. It worked well in the campaign. This is really new ground for an administration to do this. Sean, what can we learn from these interviews that Team Trump is doing?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to echo what you said, Dan, to the community. I listened. I didn't get to I got to part of the Bessett one. I've almost finished with the Lutnick one. So, for those guys in the chat or whatever, when you come on, you share ideas. Like, Mark's obviously can't. I don't want to speak for him, but two of the three of us, at least known, followed up on that, and it was a really good interview. So, thank you for those suggestions. And what I think is this. I had dinner the other night with a fairly influential, like I was asked to help sit down with a fairly influential CEO with some other conservative media. And one of the things that I told them was it's not one or the other, it's all of the above.
Yeah.
So you do the Washington Post and CNBC, but then you do Breitbart and the Sean Spicer Show or Town Hall Media or
no Sean Spicer Show, then Breitbart or somebody else.
Right. And then come on the morning meeting. But the point is that you used to be able to have this singular funnel, which you could kind of walk out onto to what they call Pebble Beach, which is that driveway right outside the White House where you see Caroline Leavitt or a lot of administration officials. And now it's you have to go to different places. The long form, I told people this before, when I was at Newsmax, there was like a mandate that we couldn't have segments that were longer than 5, at most 7 minutes. Well, if you do the math, that's usually about 3 questions, sometimes 4, depending on the guest. And they're not real substantive. And Newsmax isn't alone. I just say that from having been there. But whether it's Fox or CNN or MSNBC, they're all the same. And the same thing with the newspaper. You're going to get a little tiny quote with 12 words in it. And when you go on a show where it's 25 or 30 minutes, you can have a discussion and you can probe the person and say, wait, that's interesting. Explain that. I think that they like it because you get to be familiar with the person. You understand their background, their motives, their authenticity, or lack thereof in some cases. But I think that it gives a different side. Government used to be very much just, I'm going to sit there, say some stuff for a while, you ingest it, and then play it for your viewers later. And I find that a lot of times, especially like even on this platform, you look at the chat, people want to engage. They want to ask a question. They want to do stuff. When I had Dershowitz on the other day, I had asked some of the chat the day before, hey, give me some ideas. Some of the best questions came from that, from people in my, my YouTube, my Substack. And so I guess the point is that these long form interviews allow the administration to present things that don't really occur in a 5 to 7 minute interview. And they're really taking advantage of this. And I always find it interesting when you look back. I think you think about the Pod Save America guys and whatever, and they did a really good job out of the gate. And then Republicans maybe were a little slower coming out, but now you look at all the top shows and they're all right leaning. And that just, there's been a full embrace of that. So I'm excited. I think it's a huge thing for independent media. There was a story in Semaphore this morning about how YouTube is really trying to become the place to go, and it's allowing what they host read insert ads in a dynamic way. This is the future, and I think they get it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that just stands out is the previous administration. We've talked a lot about Joe Biden's kind of inabilities, but another thing they struggled with was the cabinet had a really hard time penetrating the news. Gina Raimondo would go out and do a ribbon cutting or something, and the tree fell and really nobody heard it. And the Biden people were very frustrated. To your point, these long form interviews, they have specific audiences. Anybody who chats for a long time, you start to relax, you let your hair down, like you just become more natural and normal. And so I think it's strengthening these cabinet members. It's getting their message to a targeted, desired audience, and it's allowing them to continue to this kind of, as you say, all of the above approach. And I think, hopefully Democrats are paying attention.
What was interesting, Dan, when I was listening to that Lutnick All In podcast, it got me to think about not to the point that you're making in a different way. I've always looked at it through the context of my old job, which is that, when I was press secretary, I literally probably spoke to the president at minimum of 10 times a day. Um, and I know from Caroline, just having been over there a few times, hey, the president wants to see you. Can you run into the Oval? That's how it goes. It wasn't, and when I dealt with doing the transition with Josh Earnest, I think he had access to Obama, but it was on the calendar.
Yeah.
I'd say, oh, 3 o'clock, I gotta go and meet with the president. You didn't, and it's just more structured. That's how he was. But under Biden, I always said to reporters, ask Karine, Jean-Pierre, and Psaki before them, when the last time they actually spoke to the president was.
Yeah.
And reporters would say, like, why? Because they never did. They rarely they would speak to the chief of staff who spoke to the president, but they wouldn't speak to him. And this goes to your point. When you listen to the Lutnick thing, it's constantly, I said to the president, I met with the president, I talked to him for an hour. Da, 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 da. They feel empowered because the cabinet under Donald Trump is speaking with him very, very regularly. They're bouncing ideas, they're getting direction, et cetera. I don't think that, you read some of the anecdotal information that came out post-election about Biden. These guys didn't meet with him ever. They never got a chance. And so they didn't feel like they actually could go out and do something and say, the president's vision is this, because they didn't know.
Yeah. I don't think Joe Biden did either.